Hi grade 12s and welcome to today's session. My name is Hayley and I'm going to be helping you with revision today. Today we are going to be dealing essential calculations, basically paper 1 type calculations, but they will come up in paper 2 because they are the essential calculations. Let's go through our checklist and see what you actually need to know by the end of the session. So we make sure that you know how to use your calculator. It's really crucial that you know how to use your calculator, that you don't have a brand new calculator that you're using for the first time when you're writing your finals, that you've been using this calculator for a while, or it's the same as the one you've been using. Also have a spare calculator just in case something happens, but it must be the same calculator. So know how to use your calculator. We need to be able to perform all the operations, and that goes to using your calculator. Work with percentages. I'm going to actually add here as well, we need to be able to work with ratio, and we need to be able to substitute into a formula, because remember they're going to give you the formula. We just need to know how to use the formula. And lastly, we're going to draw and interpret some graphs. So that's today's session. I hope that you're ready, and the best thing to do is to actually do some examples. So let's go through and see what our first calculation is. So dealing with question 1, come from the November 2012 paper 1 question 1.1. These are the kind of questions that you're going to get. We can guarantee that you will get something similar, and the question literally says simplify 1441,62 minus the square root. It looks complicated. It looks terrible. But you guys have got a calculator, and you're going to substitute this into your calculator exactly the way you see it. So let's get our calculator out, and we're going to do it exactly the same. So my calculator, I'm typing in 1441.62 minus, then I've got the square root of 8.7 squared minus 13.26. So exactly the same. Check that you have entered the numbers the same that they've been written. And for this kind of calculation, you don't even need to show us the workings. You just need to give us an answer. Okay, that answer is 1433.72. So let's write that in. It's 1433.72. Let me go back to my calculator for a second. We are rounding to 2 decimal places. The front of your paper will say, when otherwise instructed, round to 2 decimal places. So bear in mind that this has to be 2 decimal places. So we can go through a quick revision. So let's just look at that, 0.718. So let's just write that in. So we go through, it was as 0.718. Okay, we look at the second number. We look at the number after it, and if that number is greater than 5, then the number increases. So that's why I've got 0.72. So make sure that you can do these simple little things like rounding off. Those are easy marks that you can gain, and also easy marks that you can lose by just carelessness. And I know that you guys can all round off. Hey, answer, perfect, move on to the next question. Now, next question, adapted from the same paper, and question 1.1. Now it says write 0,0528 as a common fraction in simplified form. Now what we're going to do is we're going to see what does this actually mean. Let's get a little bit more paper. This 0,0528 means 528 over, and I've got a 1 with 4 zeros, over 10,000. That is what the number means. But guys, if you don't remember this, you've got a calculator, and your calculator, if we type in 0,020528, check that you're typing in the correct numbers, press equals, it will give you the fraction in the simplified form. So it's 33 over 625. Now let's write that in. It is 33 over 625, and in actual fact, if I had to do it the other way that I started with, that 528, and do that as a fraction over 10,000, forward there, I will end up with the same answer. So either way, you're going to get your answer. But your calculator, and this is why it's so important that you know how to use your calculator, because a lot of these simple first questions, especially question 1 of paper 1, calculator is crucial. It'll help you out a lot. Now that we've answered that question, let's move on to the next. So this question, same question paper. It says convert 23,005 litres to milliliters. And what's important to remember now is how many milliliters are in a litre. And I want you to think about things that you use every day. You know, your cold drink bottle, 1 litre Coke bottle, or 1 litre milk. How many milliliters make that up? And if you can relate this to every day, then you're never going to forget that there are 1,000 milliliters in 1 litre. And this actually works out to be a ratio question because we are looking for how many milliliters in 23,005 litres. And what we can clearly see from that is that we need to multiply the two. So we take our 23,005 and multiply by 1,000. We get our answer and use the calculator. You have the calculator. So get into the habit of using the calculator, even if it is something as simple as multiplying by 1,000. So our answer to that is 23,005 milliliters. And then don't forget to add your unit. In paper 1 especially, you could lose marks for just leaving out the unit. I always tell my kids that I teach in class, there's a reference to Mathslit. We know Mathslit is everyday numbers, everyday maths that you use on a daily basis. There's always a context and a reference. So most times you will have a reference, which is your unit. What are these? It's 23,005 milliliters. So it's important that you remember your units. In actual fact, what I'd like to say to you is check after every question, reread the question to check that you've actually answered it correctly and make sure that you have a unit. So that needs to be your check. Write it at the top of your paper when you start. Units, check the question, reread question. So get into that habit, you'll gain all those marks. So if I reread this, convert to milliliters, I've done that. Can move on. Now my next question, let's change our color again, just some green, adapted from the same paper. Determine the total price of 2,5 kilograms of meat that costs $63.99 per kilogram. And this again is a ratio. Well, this is in actual fact a rate, but a rate is just a special ratio. So what do we know? And I always say, write out what we've been given first. We have been given that we have $63.99 per kilogram. That means that is for 1 kilogram. And now I want to know how much is it going to cost for 2.5 kilograms. And once we have it written out like this, we can deal with it as if it is a ratio. So how do we deal with that? What we do is we see, well, what do we do from the 1 to get to 2.5? We times by 2.5. So we're going to do the same thing on the other side, times by 2.5. And then I want you to actually write this out. So I want you to then see, well, actually we're taking our $63.99 and we are timesing that by 2.5 kilograms. If you would like to leave out the units in the question, while you're doing the calculations, you may. So instead of writing it like that, let's go back to the green. We could have said, well, okay, $63.99 times 2.5. I'm happy with that. But when you get your answer, don't forget that you need the units. So let's get the calculator out. 63.99 times by 2.5, and we get an answer of 159.98. Money, well, we need to round to 2 decimal places anyway, but this is money, and money is 2 decimal places. So 159.98. 159.98. Just going to double check that I got that right. 159.98. So that's our answer. Let's reread the question. Determine the total price. We've got the total price. Does it make sense? I'd like you to also think about that. Keep that in the back of your mind. We're looking for a number that is bigger than our 63.99 because our 63.99 was for 1 kilogram. Now we're looking at 2.5 kilograms. So I'm looking for a number that is more than. It is a number more than, so that does make sense. And I'm quite happy I can move on to the next question. Right, and our next question, adapted from the same paper. Shamig had to attend a meeting that was scheduled to start at 13:15. That's at 1:15. At what time did he arrive at the meeting if he arrived 1 hour, 18 minutes early? So we want to know what time he arrived. He arrived here. The meeting was scheduled at 13:15. And we know that the time he had to wait here was 1 hour and 18 minutes early. So we can take our time of our meeting. If you draw it like this, like I've just done, it makes it easier for you to understand what you actually need to do with the numbers. So we've got our 13, let's try that again. We've got our 13 hours and 15 minutes, and we need to minus 1 hour and 18 minutes. And that's what we need to do. Now this is time, and I'm going to show you how you can do it using your calculators, but let's do it without the calculator button first. I'll come back to the calculator button. Right, so we need to minus these. When we minus 15 from 18, we must remember that is not enough. That 5 is not enough. Okay, let's do this one step at a time. So we're going to take away the 1, that becomes a 0. 15 minus 8 is 7. Now my 0 minus my 1, I'm going to change this to 12 hours, and this 0 doesn't become 10, it becomes 60. Hope that makes sense. 60 minus 1, so it's going to be 6, minus 1 is 5. I hope that you guys are following me, because we're taking, well, I'll try it a different way in a second. And now 12 minus 1 is 11. So he arrives at 11:57. Let's do it a different way, because I think that might be quite confusing. If we look at our 13:15, we minus our 15 minutes. So that takes us to 1 o'clock. All I've minused is 15 minutes. I need to minus another 3 minutes. So that's going to take me to 12:57. That was minus by 3 minutes. And finally, then I need to minus an hour, and that takes me to 11:57. So remember, when dealing with time, it's 60 minutes and not your units of 10, like your normal metric system. So that is 11:57. Alternatively, I'm going to show you how to do this on your calculator, and I hope that you can follow this. On our calculator, we have this button. I call it the time button. It is the degree button. You're going to have to find it on your calculator. So what it looks like is it has I need a pen for this. It has a degree, it has a comma, and then it has 2 commas. So if you can find that on your calculator, that is your time button. And what we do is we press that button after every time unit, hours, minutes, and seconds. So what we're going to do, I'm actually going to write it first, because then hopefully you guys can follow. We're going to say, well, okay, I've got 13 hours, then the button, and 15 minutes. So that's my button. I'm going to just draw in my button like that, and I'm going to minus from that 1 hour and 18 minutes. So we type in the button every time. So on the calculator, quite simple, we say 13 hours 15 minutes minus 1 hour and 18 minutes, and we get our answer 11 hours 57 minutes. So that is 11 hours and 57 minutes. And can you see that that's the same answer, but a whole lot easier to calculate? But guys, if you want to use this time button, you need to practice, practice, practice. But what's nice about it is that it actually does things like converting minutes. Now let's just do a quick example of this. If I want to convert, let's say 247 minutes into hours, my calculator can do it. What I need to do is I need to tell my calculator that I've got 0 hours, type in my button, and 247 minutes. the button and press equals. So let's just try that out. I've got 0 hours, 247 minutes, press equals, and I see that's 4 hours and 7 minutes. So that answer is 4 hours and 7 minutes. So practice using your calculator with this button and it will help. But if you don't know how to do it, then go back to the beginning and you have to minus the way I did in the beginning. And let's move on to the next question. We still adapted from the same paper, and now we're looking at convert 3,850 euros if the exchange rate is €1 is 10,2584 rand. Now this is a question where you need to use all your decimal places until the very end. We only round off at the very end. And what is this? This actually comes down to a ratio. And you'll hear throughout this lesson today, I'm going to say this is a ratio, this is a ratio. You need to be able to deal with ratios. How do we write it? What we know, we've got our €1 equals 10 Rand 2584. And now we're looking at how much we're going to convert if that is 3850. Once we've written it like this, easy to deal with. What do we do from there to get to there? From the 10 to get to 3,850, we times by the second number over the first. And we're going to do the same thing on that side. We're going to times by the second number over the first, 2584. And we're going to rewrite this. So what does it actually mean? We've got 3,850 divided by 10,2584. And we're timesing that by 1. Now our 1 is irrelevant. We can leave our 1 off. And we get an answer for that. Let's do my calculator, 3850. Use your fraction button if you'd like, or divide, 2584. And we get an answer 375,30, 375,30. Money must have 2 decimal places, must have a unit. So we've got our unit, we've got our 2 decimal places, we've rounded correctly if you check our calculator again. So it was 302, we've rounded down. And does the question make sense? So let's go back and check that this question, the answer makes sense. We are trying to convert rands, 3,800. We know from our rate that our euros, let's get a different color, our euros was much lower than our rands. So I'm expecting an answer to be lower than what I started with. Have I got an answer that's lower? I do. So I think that my answer is correct. And I can probably move on to the next question. So let's see what our next question is. Our next question, same paper, state whether the following event is certain, most likely, oops, let's not underline, let's not cross it out, most likely or impossible. So this comes down to a probability. When we're looking at a probability, we are looking at some values between 0 and 1 or 0 and 100%. I've got impossible would be 0. Certain will be 100% or 1. And most likely will be somewhere close to 100%. You know, even odds would be in the middle. And now let's read the question. So they want to know whether it's one of those 3. That Christmas Day is on the 25th of December in South Africa. So now we go, what day is Christmas on? Christmas is on the 25th of December, anywhere in the world, even in South Africa. So we're going that it is definitely going to happen. It's 100%. So the answer to this is that it is certain. Now guys, when it comes to probability, they love asking you questions where the answer is certain or the answer is impossible. They love those kind of questions. So look out for them, so you know they're going to come up. So that was certain. And now we can move on to the next question. And the next question says, same question paper. The price per litre of diesel at 9 different garages is listed below. Determine the median price per litre of diesel. So now it's important that we understand what is median. Median is my middle number. Middle number in order. So whenever I look at these values, I'm going to start off by just analyzing the 9 values that I have and see if they are in order or not. So if I look 9.97, 9.97, 1012, 1017, 1029, 1079, 1079, 1079, 1095, they are already in order. So that's perfect. And now I'm looking for the middle number. Now, can rewrite them if you'd like and start off by your 997 and literally write them all out. Or you can actually think, well, okay, if I've got 9 values, I'm looking at 9 different values, then my middle one, let's draw 9, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. My middle value is actually my 5th one. So my middle value will be my 5th value. So then I've got 4 from that side, or 5, it's the 5th value from that side and the 5th value from that side. You'd like, you can use your hands and you can kind of put your hands over each number. Just make sure that you do it neatly. So we're looking for the 5th number. And now all I need to do is find out, well, which is my 5th? So I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th. So my 5th number is 1029. That is my median value. What's nice about medians, I'm going to tell you while we're discussing it, and I know we've done this before when we did data handling, but your median excludes outliers. So it's important to remember that fact. Median excludes outliers. All right, let's move on to question 2. Question 2, adapted now from the November 2012 paper 1, question 1.2. Miss Lena asked all the learners in her class what their favorite fruit juice was. She illustrated the data in a bar graph below. Whenever you get a graph, I'd like you to analyze a graph, a table, anything like that. Analyze it before you go on to read the questions. So we're looking at our favorite fruit juice. That's the type of juice. So we've got pineapple, we've got orange, we've got mango, and these are the number of learners. And then what I'd like to do is actually analyze this a little bit more, is we can see that we've got 12, 24, 36, but I want to know what each one of these values in between represents. So I've got from 0 to 12, and I've got 4 lines. And you see that I've got 4 lines here? Which means that I'm taking my 12 and dividing it by 4 to get my numbers in between. So that would be 3, 6, 9, 12, actually 15, 18, 21, 24. Now to add these 27, 30, 33, and 36. And I know I'm going to need them later, so it just makes it easier for me to actually interpret the question and answer the question. How many learners does she have in her class? Now remember, our answer said all the learners. So all the learners, we've got to read off each one of these. So I'm going to take my 3 juices. So I've got my pineapple, and to that I'm going to add my orange juice, and finally I'm going to add my mango. And now reading off the table, how many said pineapple? Pineapple was 21. Orange was 30. And mango was 9. And now my calculator, take out my calculator. Even though it's a simple calculation, we can always check it on the calculator. And we see that she had 60 learners. And can you see that I haven't just given the number 60? I've actually given the context. So even with a number question like this, I have given the context. I've added my units. There were 60 learners. Let's see what the next part of this question is. Okay, no, that was the end of that question. Right, let's move on to question 3. Question 3 now. Same paper, the November paper 1, but now question 1.3. Mrs. Rose received a cash sales slip after she bought some goods at CH Haven at Cape Town International Airport. Below is a copy of the cash sales slip, and some of the details have been omitted. So let's see, analyze the slip. Right, we can see the name of the shop. Cape Town International Airport tells you the domestic departure, they've got the telephone number, VAT number, and this is a tax invoice. We've got the date, we've got the time, and then what did she buy? Chocolate slabs, she bought 3. Bangles, we don't know how many she bought, but we know the price. A Joy magazine, we know she bought 1 at $24.95. We've got a subtotal, total excluding VAT, total including VAT. So we can see that our prices that were quoted were including VAT. The cash payment, what's the total amount that she tendered? That's the amount she gave to the cashier. And finally, her change. And then we can see our receipt included the 14% VAT. Right. And we know that VAT is a value-added tax. How much did Mrs. Rose pay in total for 3 slabs of chocolate? Well, our 3 slabs of chocolate, she paid $14.95 each. So we take our 3 slab of chocolates and we times it by $14.95. $14.95 times 3 to get our total. And we see that's $44.85. Have we answered the questions? How much did she pay for the 3 slabs? We've done that, got those marks. How many bangles did Mrs. Rose buy? Well, let's go back to our slip. We know, let's delete this number, we know that our bangles, she paid $97.65 in total. We don't know how many she bought, but we do know the price of them. So we can take our $97.65 and divide it by the price for 1, and the price for 1 was $13.95. Get your calculator out. It was $97.65 divided by $13.95, and we see that she bought 7. So she bought 7 bangles. A Joy magazine costs R21.89 excluding VAT. Calculate the amount of VAT paid on the Joy magazine. Now, we know that we paid $24.95 for the Joy magazine. So we can literally say $24.95 minus what we were told to get our answer. So that was $24.95 minus $21.89, and we get our answer of R3.06. Because we know both values. Alternatively, we could have taken our $21.89, so I'm going to put this as an OR. Let's take our R21.89 and times by 14%, because we know that VAT is 14%. So let's try that. 21.89 times by 14%, and we get an answer of 3.06. Remember, rounding to 2 decimal places, it's money, so our 46 will disappear, and we get our same answer. And you know, this is an important fact. There are often more than one way of doing a calculation. There's often quite a few different combinations or different ways of looking at something. And I know it happens to me fairly often. I set an exam and then I do my memo, and then all of a sudden one of my kids comes up with something that is absolutely brilliant. And I thought, I never thought of doing it that way. And their calculations are correct. So don't be scared to do different methods. And I kind of stick to what you know and what you understand, but there are different ways of doing calculations, and don't be afraid. And don't come out of the exam and think, well, my friend said they did this, therefore I must be wrong, because it's not necessarily the case. So see 2 different calculations for the same answer. Finally, the question then says, calculate the total excluding VAT for the goods bought. So now we want to know what that total excluding VAT is. And we know that our including VAT was $167.45. So we know that this was $167.45, and that was including VAT. Now they want us to find the amount excluding VAT. And this, guys, I'm going to put a big star here. This is really important. This question comes up quite often, and I know most of the kids that I teach actually end up making a mistake with this kind of question. Because what we are looking for the original amount. To that original amount, we increase, well, let's write it. We actually add VAT. And then our total is 167.45. So we are looking for this original amount. Now, if I work 14% of that amount, it's not going to be enough. It's going to be a little bit too much because that amount is not what we look at. We look at 14% of the original. So how do we go about doing this? Well, let's change our colors. We have an original value, which we don't know what that is. We are increasing it by VAT. And when I increase by percentage, I say let's times by 114%. So when we increase by a percentage, we times by 100 plus the percentage. So that's why I've got 114%. And that price is equal to 167.45. So now my original amount is actually my 167.45 divided by 114%. Because to get my original here, I need to get rid of this 114, so I'm going to divide both sides by 114%, because those cancel, and that's what I get there. So now in my calculator, I see that it is, use my fraction button, 167.45, divide by 114%, and I get an answer of 146.89. 146.89. So that is the amount excluding VAT. And a good way to check this would be, if I now increase this by VAT, do I get back to this 167.45? So to check, I'm going to say, well, okay, if I take my 146.89 and times it by 114%, do I get my right answer? And you can quite clearly see that I do. So it's a good thing to check, because if you take 14% of that 167, you're not going to get back to 167. So this is really important, because this will come up, and put another star next to it, it will come up, tends to come up in paper 2, although like you see, in this one it came up in paper 1. Before we go on to our next question, I think, guys, maybe you need a bit of a break, go stretch, get something to eat, have a little bit to drink, but hurry back so that we can carry on with these crucial, essential calculations. I'll see you soon. Welcome back, grade 12s. I hope that you had a nice break and that you are ready to go for our last session. So what we're going to do is go straight into the questions. So let's see. We have now question 4 that's adapted from the same paper, question 1.4. South Africa imports crude oil from different countries. Table 1 below shows the crude oil imported during 2010 and 2011. So now we have our table. It's the crude oil imported. We've got our countries, so there's different countries. We've got Angola, Iran, Nigeria, Saudi Arabia, and other countries. The amount of crude oil, and this is important, in millions of tons. So whenever you have a table, they tend to leave out all the zeros. They'll make the table a little bit easier to read. But don't forget that this answer, so if we look at Angola, that 3,409, that's million tons. So it's important that we use that in our answers, or don't forget about it in our answers. So let's read our question, and they'll give you the source. Right, calculate the total amount of crude oil imported during 2011. So the total amount, 2011, what we're going to do is we're going to just add those up. And on your paper, you can actually write it as 1,948. You don't have to write all these numbers. You can say plus, 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 2,264. So your examiner knows what you're doing. So let's get our calculator out, and actually move the calculator over here so we can add this. It's 1,948 plus 4,874. Just double check as you're typing your numbers that you're typing them incorrectly. Plus 3,755 plus 4,793, 793, see why it's important that you check, plus 2,264. And get an answer of that, and 17,634, so that was 17,634, and remember that wasn't the number. I told you that was million tons. It was million tons. So it's important that you put that number in. Now, you don't have to go and add all the zeros and change it into a number with the zeros. You can literally say million tons. That's how they gave you the question. That's how they'll be happy with the answer. But be careful if you do add the million. What you need to do to add that million is you actually need to take your answer and times by a million, because we are going to get rid of those decimal. So if you want to, so let's just write this, it becomes 17,634 with another 3 zeros, and now that's tons. It's important that you take away that decimal, because I know you guys instinctively think, well, if I leave the decimal, it doesn't mean anything because I meant to take it away. That decimal must disappear. Okay? Because if you add the decimal, then the zeros after the decimal are meaningless, and then you're going to get the answer wrong. Right, from which country did South Africa import most of its crude oil during 2010 and 2011? So we're looking at the country with the most. So let's go through 2010, where was the most? Our most was from that country. We're comparing 5,5 to 4,5. And in 2011, where was our most? Our most was that country, 4,8 to 4,7. So clearly they're the same country. Brilliant. So it means that they're imported both from Iran. And then lastly, which country showed the largest increase in the amount of crude oil exported to South Africa between 2010 and 2011? We're looking at the largest increase. So what we need to do is we need to look at comparison between the first and the second number, the largest increase. So if we go to Angola, Angola in 2010 to 2011 went down. So Angola, let's change our color so we don't get confused. Angola's out. Right, Iran went from 5.5 to 4.74, that's also out. 3.5 to 3.7, okay, that one's looking good. The next one, 4.5 to 4.7 also could be. So the last three could be possibilities. And now what we need to do is we need to actually just check and compare the one value to the other. So we're going to minus them. So I'm going to move my calculator over a little bit more. So I'm going to check 3,755 minus 3,594. And let's write in that answer. That is 0, I need a pen for that. 0,161, was it 161? Okay, do the next one. 4,793, 793 minus 4,584, and that answer is 0,209. So that's looking better. And the last one, don't even know if we need to calculate, because if we add another 0,2 on here, that would become 0,3, that's less. So quite easily I can see that it is Saudi Arabia. But in your exam, it would actually show all calculations. Or unless you want to explain, but explain to the examiner then that you can see that it is not enough. So this answer was Saudi Arabia. And you're going to show all the calculations here. Show the calculations. Right, let's move on to our next question. Question 5, November 2012, paper 1, question 2.2. South Africa's Road Traffic Management Corporation reports that sending an SMS, that's your short message service, from a cell phone while driving increases the reaction time needed to stop a vehicle in an emergency. It increases it from 1.2 seconds to 1.56 seconds. So that's what they have reported. Calculate the percentage increase in the reaction time it takes to stop a vehicle when sending an SMS while driving. And they give you the formula. The percentage increase in reaction time is the difference in time over the original time, and we're timesing by 100. So what do we do? We're looking at, or I tell my kids, it's my new number minus my old number divided by the old number. So I'm actually going to write that. That's my new number minus my old number divided by the old number and times by 100, because we're always looking for percentage. So difference in time. My new number is the 1,56 minus my old number, which was 1,2. That's going to give me the difference in time, that's that part, divided by my original time, which was 1,2, and times that by 100. So on my calculator, let's move the calculator back to it. Part of the place. Right. On my calculator, use the fraction button. 1,56 minus 1,2 divided by 1,2 and times by 100. You can do this all in one step, and it is a 30% increase. Don't forget, reference, it is a percentage. So the reaction time is increased by 30%. Let's move on to the next part. Same information. Calculate the distance in meters that a car will travel in 1,36 seconds if it is traveling at an average speed of 27.95 meters per second. And they give you the formula. Distance is average speed times time. So I'm going to show you that first. Okay, so our average speed, we're going to do this first, is 27.95 times by time of 1,36. Got to make sure that you're in the same units. So we're dealing with meters per second, and those are seconds, so we are fine. And I'm going to do this calculation, 27.95 times by 1.36, and we get an answer of 38,01 meters. So that's the distance in meters that a car is going to take to stop. What I want to show you as well, this is a ratio. Have a look at this. If we didn't have the formula, what do we know? We know 27.95 meters in 1 second. We're looking for how far in 1.36 seconds. Can you see that it's a ratio? So we see, what do we do here? We times by 1,36. We're going to do the same thing here, times by 1,36, which is what we did above. So ratio again. So it's important that you remember things like meters per second. Those are 2 units. Okay, and we got our answer. Reread, calculate the distance in meters that a car traveling, average speed, and we've got it. So we've answered our question, and we can move on to the next question. Right, let's see what our next question is. Our next question is question 6, and now this comes from the same paper, now question 2.3. 2 businessmen, Mr. Norby and Mr. Koza, travel from their hometown to Pretoria. The distance from Pretoria and the time is indicated on the graph below. So we've got a graph. We're going to analyze the graph. We got traveling to Pretoria. This is the distance from Pretoria in kilometers. So we can see this is the distance from Pretoria, and this is the time that it takes. So Mr. Norby, we can see, starts at 200 kilometers from Pretoria. Mr. Koza is between 200 and 300, so that was actually 250. Each one of these represents 50. And our time here, we're going from 7:30, 8:30. There's one in between, so that will be 800. And that will be 9 o'clock. So make it easier to actually see. Answer your questions if you've interpreted and you understood the solution clearly. Right. What time did Mr. Koza leave his hometown? So find Mr. Koza. Mr. Koza left hometown and he left at, no, he didn't. He was still at home at this point. Okay, so up until there, he was at home. That's when he left home, because he started getting closer to Pretoria. So he left between 8 and 9:30, so he left at 9 o'clock. Which one of the two businessmen lives closer to Pretoria? Well, who lives closer? Mr. Norby lives 200 kilometers. Mr. Khoza lives 250, so it's Mr. Norby. How long did Mr. Norby take to travel to Pretoria? Right, so now we want to know how long it took him to travel. He left at this point and he arrived at 10:30. So what time did he leave? He left at 8:30, he arrived at 10:30. So we've got our 10:30 minus our 8:30. Now I know this is an easy calculation, this is 2 hours. But let us just practice using that button on the calculator. So we have, he arrived at 10, let's put it in as 10 hours, 30 minutes, minus 8 hours, 30 minutes, and we get an answer of 2 hours. So practice using that button, it really is stunning. So 2 hours, I know that was an easy calculation. And then we've got estimate Mr. Khoza's arrival time in Pretoria. So Mr. Khoza, arrival time is over there. Let's get a different color. We were using green for him. He arrived there. It is between 10:30 and 11:30, so that is 11. And he arrived somewhere between the two. Now you could go with halfway between the two. It does look a little bit halfway. So let's say 10:45, 10:46. I kind of will give you the answer. There's a fair amount of leeway when it comes to that. So they will probably give you 5 minutes on either side. So it would probably, your answers from 10:40 to 10:50 would be fine. Cannot be it cannot be 10:30 and it cannot be 11. Those are definitely out. And it's definitely somewhere in the middle. So 10:45 would be perfect. And then at what time were the two businessmen exactly 100 kilometers apart? So we're looking at the graph where they were 100 kilometers apart. That's 2 blocks. So the only place where there was 2 blocks apart was at 9 o'clock in the morning. So let's write that in. And that is at 9 o'clock in the morning. So use your ruler. Your ruler is going to help you to determine this. Right. And then let's move on to our next question, which is again adapted from the same paper, but now we're dealing with question 2.4. Right, Kedwin had a check account with a Zico Bank. The bank charges a service fee up to a maximum of R31.50, that's VAT included, on all transaction amounts. The table 2 below shows 5 different transactions on her check account. And let's see what the thing is. We've got transactions on their check account. We've got 5 transactions, which they told us. We've got a debit order for car repayment. That's the transaction amount in rands, the service fee in rands. Debit order for cell phone contract, that's the amount in rands. We're looking for the service fee, personal loan repayment, vehicle and household insurance, and our check payment. So we now need to calculate the missing value A using the formula. So our formula is service fee in rand is R3.50, that's our basic fee, plus R1.20 of the 1.20% of the transaction amount. So what is our transaction amount? Our transaction amount is R344.50. So we're going to rewrite that. So it's R3.50 plus 1.20% of the transaction amount, which was R344.50. So we substitute into the formula exactly the way they've given it to us. We get our calculator out, and our calculator can do this for us. 3.50 plus 1.20% of 344, was it 344.50? 344.50, and we get an amount of 7.634 is 7.634. That's rand, and rand is 2 decimal places. So I'm going to put it as 2 decimal places. We could actually even write it in here, 7.63. Right. Now they want us to calculate the missing value of B using the following formula. So the amount in rands is the service fee minus 3 Rand 50 divided by 1,20%. So what have I got? My service fee was 11 Rand 85. So I'm going to get my amount is 11 Rand 85 minus 3 Rand 50 divided by 1,20%. Now guys, these formulas might be foreign. You might not have seen this kind of formula before. I'm hoping that you have, because you definitely should have done banking. But don't panic. They give you the formula. All you need to be able to do is apply and substitute into the formula and type it into your calculator exactly the way they give it to you. So what do we now do? We take our calculator and we say our calculator, we're going to use the fraction button, 11,85 minus 3 Rand 50 divided by 1,20%, and I get an amount of 695.83. So that is 695.83. That in fact is that amount. So my vehicle household insurance was 695.83. And you know what, guys, you can go and you can look at it and see, does it actually make sense? We're looking at the one above was higher. It was a higher transaction fee. So I think that my answer does make sense. That was lower, that was a lower fee. It kind of makes sense that you're paying a fee on the amount of money that you are transacting, that you are moving from one account to another. You're paying, you're withdrawing, or whatever it is that you're doing. And I think that that takes us to the end of our questions, the end of today's session. So I hope that it's helped. What's important is you can use your calculator. You read the questions, reread the questions after you've done your calculation. Don't forget rounding to 2 decimal places. Don't forget units. You must have a reference. Whenever you get an answer, there must be a reference to it. Has to make sense. Making sense of a calculation to see if you've got an answer. Is it bigger, smaller? What were you expecting the answer to be? And at the end of the day, you know what? Relax. Enjoy this paper, especially paper 1. It's a fun paper to do. And I want to wish you luck. So I hope to see you again for revision. But practice, practice, practice. Cheers, grade 12s.